You've tried to change. You know the pattern. You can see exactly what you're doing, and you still can't stop it. You consciously want peace, but still emotionally collapse when triggered. You consciously want love, but still push people away. You consciously want change, but you still wake up in the same cycles. And at some point, you start wondering, what's wrong with me? Well, nothing's wrong with you, but there is something running underneath your behavior that your conscious mind has no idea about. And the easiest way to understand it is through a computer. When you use a computer, you only see the interface, the screen, the apps, the windows, the notifications. That's the visible layer. But underneath that visible layer, there are thousands of hidden processes running constantly. Background tasks, memory allocation, security systems, stored files, hidden programming. And your psyche works the exact same way. The conscious mind is like the visible screen. It's the part that you're aware of. They're your thoughts, your current attention, your decisions in a moment. But underneath that, the unconscious is always running, always. And most people don't realize this because they confuse awareness with control. But being aware of yourself is not the same thing as being free from what's running underneath. And that's why you can say, I know I shouldn't react this way, and I still do it. Because the unconscious process activates first, before the conscious mind even catches up. Most people hear the word ego and think arrogance, self-importance, and pride. But psychologically, the ego is simply the version of yourself that you believe yourself to be. It's the user profile. It's the part that says, this is me, this is who I am, that's what I believe. And that is necessary. Without some of the ego structure, you wouldn't psychologically function. But here's where people actually get stuck. Most people don't realize that the ego is only one part of the system. Instead, they become completely identified with it. They mistake the user profile for the entire system. And this is where so much suffering comes from. Because you start defending the profile instead of questioning it. And every reaction feels justified. Every belief feels like truth. And every pattern feels like personality. And that's where awakening often begins. The moment a person starts realizing, maybe I'm not every thought I think. Maybe I'm not every emotion I feel. And I'm not every reaction I have. That realization changes everything. Because for the first time, you start watching the programming instead of obeying it. And the persona is different from the ego. The ego is who you believe yourself to be. But the persona is the version of yourself that you show the world. It's a social mask. Professional, spiritual, successful, confident, calm, and helpful. There's nothing wrong with having one. We all do. But many people become so attached to the image that they project that they lose the connection with what's actually happening underneath. And you've probably felt this. Telling everyone you're fine when internally you're not. Presenting yourself as healed while you're still carrying what you haven't looked at. Performing confidence while fear is running quietly in the background. A person can build on an entire spiritual identity while unconsciously filled with fear. A person can appear calm on the outside while internally falling apart. The persona is not the full psyche. It's only the visible interface. And eventually, the hidden parts starts demanding attention, whether you're ready for it or not. And that's where it gets really important. The shadow is the part of yourself that you learn to hide. The emotions, the traits, the impulses that you were taught that were unacceptable, like anger, fear, jealousy, weakness, shame. And at some point you learned, consciously or not, that those parts were not okay to show. So you push them down. And most people think if I suppress something, it disappears. But psychologically, suppressed material does not disappear. It becomes unconscious. Just like a deleted file that still exists hidden inside the computer. The shadow keeps operating underneath the surface. And this is why you get triggered in ways you can't fully explain. Why the anger comes out when you said you're fine. Why you shut down when you actually wanted to stay open. And why you push people away when what you actually want is to feel close. The reaction isn't coming from who you are consciously. It's coming from what you buried. Because the unconscious always finds a way to express itself. Through reactions, through anxiety, through projecting onto other people, through emotional explosions that seem to come out of nowhere, through the patterns that you can't stop repeating. And the psyche always seeks expression. And the parts you refuse to look at become the parts that runs your entire life. And then there's something most people know very well, even if they haven't had a name for it yet. The superego is like the mind's internal security system. It constantly scans your behavior, looking for what it believes it's wrong, dangerous, or unacceptable. You should do better. You're failing. You're not enough. You shouldn't feel like this. You need to improve. You must be perfect. Sounds familiar? But for many people, this voice runs constantly, and they live under a kind of internal surveillance, always monitor, always criticizing, and always trying to become acceptable enough. But here's what most people never realize about that voice. They think that's the truth, but most of the time it's just conditioning. It's programming that you absorb from parents, religion, schools, trauma, expectations, and this system that you never consciously chose. You have been obeying your entire life. That exhaustion that you feel from never being enough. And that's not reality. That's old programming running on a loop. But underneath all these layers, there's something called the self. And the self is very different from the ego. The ego says, this is who I am. But the self is the deeper intelligence of the whole psyche. It's the part that moves towards integration, towards balance, wholeness, and truth. Not the polished version, but the real version. And this is why healing is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming integrated. And most people think that transformation means getting rid of the darkness, eliminate the fear, and removing the weakness. But psychologically, transformation is not destroying these parts of yourself. It's developing a conscious relationship with it. The reactions, the shadow, the fear, the conditioning, seeing it all clearly instead of obeying it unconsciously and being controlled by it. And this is why awareness alone doesn't automatically change people. Because conscious intention is not only one layer of the system. You can consciously want peace while unconsciously fear is still running in the background underneath it all. You can consciously want intimacy while unconscious wounds are still bracing for pain. You can consciously want change while your nervous system still experiences change as danger. And that's why the psyche keeps repeating. Not because you're weak, not because you don't want bad enough, but the unconscious systems is overriding the conscious intention again and again until the awareness goes deep enough to actually see the hidden process underneath. Not just understand it, but actually see it in real time, in your reactions, in the moment before the pattern runs. So maybe awakening isn't what most people think it is. It's not becoming spiritually superior. It's not transcending being human. It's not escaping to some higher state. Maybe awakening is just becoming conscious of the system that's running your life without your permission. The programming that you inherited, the patterns that you never chose. You are not your emotions. You are not your conditioning. You are not the hidden process running underneath your behavior. You are the awareness that can finally see them. In the moment that you really see them, not just understand them, they lose their grip. And that's not a spiritual concept. That's just what happens when the light finally reaches what is been hiding. And that's where real freedom begins.